Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L coming in to talk about My Hero Academia chapter 263. Cool. Hey guys, good to be here. I'm gonna go through this chapter. I'm hoping to get this chapter done in a shorter time than usual. I got my bullet points. It's all good. I got my actual notes. It's gonna be a good one. This was a pretty cool chapter, so let's just get right into it and talk about this chapter. It's already pretty late on a Sunday, so I don't want to keep you guys waiting any longer. All right, so for this chapter, the biggest thing I want to say is first, in regards to the title of the video, this was a really good chapter for Kaminari. I think Kaminari, when you look at it, he had a really strong story within this chapter. Just how they established it and how he got his climax. That was a really good example of a short story within a longer story. And it's really within that story that the question, is Kaminari a traitor, I think gets kind of answered. Because when you see him there, when you actually have a character monologuing or you're seeing the interior of their thoughts, it gets a lot harder to say that this character is being disingenuine, right? It gets a lot hard to say that this character is lying. The good example here is that when you go back and you look at the Doctor, right? When people are saying that the Doctor was a fake, at the point I remember pointing out that this is kind of a weird territory because we already got to see the interior of his mind, and in these type of scenarios, look at what had to happen with the Doctor. In order to justify the Doctor was a fake, you had to use a power that specifically copies a person so thoroughly that it even copies their thought patterns, such that when the Doctor is having his little moment of elation, that is legitimately a moment of elation that the real Doctor would have. So it's that kind of thing. The reason I'm bringing that up is because if you're saying that Kaminari is still a traitor, your challenge is justifying Kaminari's behavior in this chapter, him looking back at, say, Jiro, thinking about who he cares about, why he's motivated to move forward and do better. You have to come up with ways to justify how that reality could still be true. Now, there are ways of doing that. For instance, you could say that because there was any kind of confirmation within Kaminari's scenes, you could say that maybe Kaminari, when he's looking back at Jiro, he's thinking, oh, I'm the only one that should be allowed to kill her or something like that. If you wanted to kind of pervert Kaminari's intent here, that's kind of the level of work you'd have to do. So overall, when it comes to Kaminari and that whole traitor thing, I think this is a really great chapter for saying that he isn't, because it's really hard to invalidate internal feelings. Like he has reasons to lie to people, but he doesn't have reasons to lie to himself. So that requires a lot more plot finesse. You require a lot more external factors to be able to justify that type of thing. But regardless, Kaminari had a great time here. And that's really the big thing I wanted to go into, especially as a shipper. Seeing Kaminari look back at Jiro, even though like in some ways it might still be inconclusive, it was a feel-good moment. It feels good. And so when we get to that page, we'll talk more about it there. But yeah, I would like to know what you guys think. Do you think Kaminari is a traitor? How would you, and if you do, how would you justify this scene and make it work within the idea that he's a traitor? I think with this one, seeing that Kaminari cares about Jiro and that he thinks of her when we have him being told to think about people that you care about, I think it's kind of self-evident that he's a good guy, especially with Tokoyami. But again, whenever our character is saying like, I've seen this in you, it's good for narrative purposes, but those, it's not a primary source. You could still make a plot where the character is just wrong. Tokoyami feeling that Kaminari is a good person is not as valuable as Kaminari actually showing us his thought process. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's just get into the page-by-page walkthrough as we have more things to talk about. There's a lot of really interesting things. We're going to be jumping all over the place when it comes to the chapter and previous chapters, depending on how I want to show you guys stuff. Okay, so page 1. So with page 1, I have my notes here. So if you see me looking down, it's because I'm looking at my notes. The big things in page 1... there's not really a lot. What I want to point you to is that the sidekick that we're seeing in page 1, he was part of, I think, the number 13 hero Shishido's group, and he was also in that group with Ojiro and Sato. So that's really important to note. Keep in mind the configurations here, because that's going to help us with one of the later pages. In this page, the other thing that's of value is that Jiro puts her plugs into the ground, and this was really important for the rest of the construction of the chapter when it came to the Kaminari story, because without Jiro's earplugs, her words might not have as much weight. So page 2, I think, is not really worth looking at. There's not really much value here. And the reason that is because this is a page for viewer convenience. This page just serves to remind us what we're doing in the arc. And that's really, you can really tell when you have the second panel saying this operation has brought heroes together on an unprecedented scale. Think about that line. What does that line actually tell you, the reader? Nothing. It's a wasted line. The line only makes sense in the context of it's been weeks since we've seen this group. So that's what I really want to show you here, is that this is a page where the author is using it to remind you who's at this area and what are they doing in this particular situation and what exactly were the stakes. And the panel that really exemplifies this on this page is when you have specifically the panel of just the Class 1A kids. Think about that. Why show only the 1A kids and not the 1B kids? Because Class 1A are more important. They are the important characters. They are the characters that an author would go and think, these are the characters that readers are more likely to be concerned about, so let's show them or remind them which Class 1A characters are in this location. That page was entirely for viewer convenience, and this kind of stuff is important. This chapter has not lost any value for having this page. It's just, it has to happen. And you can always tell that these pages are for viewer convenience when they're reiterating information. Page 3 is also not very valuable, aside from it being the build-up for the Kaminari story arc that we saw within the chapter. And also, again, another convenience page where the author reminds us that Kaminari wants to be with Class 1A. As we recall, I believe in chapter, I think it was like not 246, right, 259. Kaminari shouted out loud in the forest that he misses Class 1A. So again, just a reiterating of where the characters stand in all this. I will say though, I didn't think that Kaminari's missing plotline would turn into something so cool in this chapter. So props to the author. He did a really great job on that one. Okay, so page 4 and 5 is a giant spread, and man, it is worth appreciating. First, the heroes running in. I want to show you this guy, the floater. We didn't see this guy in chapter 259, man. So this is a new design, unless this character was obscured by the speech bubble in 259. Now, if I have to guess who this person is, I'm guessing this is Majestic. He's one of the few people that we didn't have a picture for, and also Momo is in the area. And given that Shishido is in the area, and given that we can kind of see that the kids are more or less matched with the people that they were with, it's pretty good odds that this is Majestic. Now, you might say that this guy doesn't really look like someone you would call Majestic, but I want to point you back to chapter, I think this one's 246. Yes, 246. If you look at Momo's panel in 246, look at the designs in the background. There's little swirls, and there's also little, well, what would you call them, circles? And then when you look at this guy's design, you can kind of see the swirls in his quirk ability, whatever that is. Those little hoops that are propelling him forward. But if you also look at his cloth, there are little circle designs on his cloth. So already he does kind of follow the aesthetic that we saw in Momo's panel. So this may very well be Majestic. Again, when you consider that Jiro is there and she's associated to Gang Orca, when you consider that Ashido and Aoyama are there and they're kind of associated to Yoroi, was that his name? You know, like the armored guy. I mean, when you consider that Team Lurkers are there and Team Lurkers interns are also behind them, it just tells you like, okay, the heroes are more or less associated here. Fat Gum and Kirishima, they're in the same area. So other stuff, it's worth seeing all these neat designs. One cool detail is that this new hero is propelling Cementos. Other details are that Miss Joke has moved. She was initially right behind Mushroom Girl and Mudman, and now she's closer to the camera. So that's kind of interesting. I think the author did that because he wanted to re-emphasize Miss Joke here. Moving away from the hero panel, there's something really important going on with Midnight. She kind of continues her somber rhetoric from chapter 259, where she seems in general a lot more grounded. It's really cool having her be so somber so consistently. So props to the author for maintaining her tone. I think that really works. When you read her line though, you should be thinking that she legit feels bad about the situation she's putting the students in. And when I read the lines, I think she wants to prioritize student safety. I love what the author's doing with her. We'll talk about that at her next panel. Anyway, the rest of the page is just the Kaminari build-up. Anything that's regarding Kaminari, I'll just say it's Kaminari buildup. One final thing that I want to point you to in this particular page is when you're looking at Cementos in the final panel. This was the clue to look back at the spread because it specifically featured Cementos and the hero that I think is majestic. There was a really nice level of detail here because you saw Cementos being carried or propelled by this hero, and then you saw him being launched by the hero. I think that was just really cool details from the author in general. Okay, so now we're at page 6 and 7, and this is pretty much an establishing the scene type page. What I could say for this page, I didn't think it was going to be Cementos that was destroying the building. Should have thought about that, but I don't really think about cement when I'm thinking about what is a building made of. I really thought it was mostly wood and maybe some brick. So that's my own fault for not knowing more about building structure. But that was cool. Rookie move for me, but thank God that the author made it very clear with having the characters point that out. And then the other value in page 6 is that, well, page 6 and 7 is that Skeptic tells us which groups are coming in, that being specifically Violet, Black, and Brown. Toga and Skeptic's groups are not going to be out here, which makes sense because those are the intelligence groups, but everyone else is here, which is important because there is something missing in one of the next pages. So page 8 and 9, again, another page that doesn't really have that much value aside from being a wonderful exposition page. Like, it looks good. Props to Cementos. I think the author did great with creating that level of carnage. Really neat to see. Really neat to see how many floors there are in the building from so far away. Cool to see the characters running in. The other point of value for this particular page is that you have that guy coming forward, and he's talking about a rhetoric. He's bringing a rhetoric that kind of emphasizes preparedness, being the first to go, not just being waiting, being, I think, not reactionary. So I like what kind of rhetoric the character was bringing in. Feels good, man. Feels good seeing him. Cool things in this one is that he was already carrying his taser. And another thing that I want to say is that I never noticed that he had the lightning strike in his hair. That would have been such a dead giveaway of what his quirk was. So page 10 and 11, we have the callback to the heroes versus villains spread that you might remember from the summer camp arc, or at least the style of it. It was really neat. Now, things get interesting here. In the villain group that we're seeing here, 2 characters from, I believe, Spinner's group are missing. And here are the images of this character. So we have this girl. She is so designed. She has to be involved here somewhere. It might be that she was just left out of the spread. But we'll have to see. And also the other big guy. Really, when you look at this big guy and you look at Cementos in the chapter and how cute Cementos looks with his like really angry face, it's like maybe this is the guy that Cementos is gonna fight, right? Like that feels appropriate. I don't want to be shapist, but they're both different shapes. And as far as I'm concerned, the Liberation Army is clearly shapist, given that Spinner got so many mutant types. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. It is interesting that those 2 characters are missing because when you look at the spread, there's 2 randoms thrown into the spread on the Paranormal Liberation front side, and I'm showing them here on the screen. Really interesting. Those 2 designs could have just been the other ones. I wonder if the author removed them for some kind of logistical reason. We'll have to see next chapter. Next chapter, I'll be able to build a better image. One thing I do want to say here when we're going into this big fight with the 2 groups is that what I said back in chapter 257, I believe, what was it? Yeah, 258. Back in 258, I said that these characters were worth a damn. These characters were going to have like at least 3 panels of action or 3 pages of action. And with this chapter, that's pretty much what we got when it came to the guy that was charging ahead. So I'm happy. This is exactly what they were built for, right? When you look back at 258 and you look at now, that's why the author brought in so many characters, because he needed named characters for the heroes to face off with. Now, one more thing I want to point you to on the villain side is that the nice little old lady here and this person here right behind her, they both have like a mark on their forehead. So I wonder if they're related either by familial relation or religious relations. I wonder. It's just because both having the same spot on their forehead. Odd. On the heroes side, what's interesting are the heroes featured. First off, again, emphasis on that guy that I'm expecting is majestic. Really interesting that he's being featured in that image, especially because if he's going to be so important that he's in this giant group shot, why wasn't he there in the first shot back in 256? That's a big question mark for me. It might just be he was obscured by that speech bubble, in all honesty. Like maybe the author drew him in there and then the speech bubble just took it up. Honestly, that's probably it. The other one that's important here is that Selkie is featured. why is Selkie featured? Of all the people, the person that we only got a design for in the anime. That's odd. When I'm looking at that there, Selkie represents a bond with Tsuyu. That's what I'm seeing here. Selkie might be there because Tsuyu would be hurt if Selkie is hurt. Maybe? Regardless, the hero side has a pretty good amount of heroes coming in there. Edgeshot should be able to take out quite a few of these people. None of these people should be capable of taking on Edgeshot, in all honesty. So I'm expecting some pretty cool maneuvers here. It's gonna be fun to see this battle. In terms of how the battle may flow, it may flow in the way that we saw here, where one guy's gonna use a quirk and another character is gonna counter the quirk. I don't expect to get these long drawn out battles. I expect that we're gonna be seeing skirmishes of just quirk usage one after the other. Hero Academia doesn't have the resources to be able to do full-on fights for so many characters. There's like 13 people on the villain side and like 12 heroes on the other one in terms of this initial matchup. Again, we'll have to see. We'll have to see what they want to do. We were told that all these villains were better than the average hero, and thankfully the ones fighting them are not average heroes. Okay, so moving on to page 12, the author puts in this line about what happens if the heroes fail. This line tells us the hero's rationale on having so many units in both the short term and the long term. The line in question is if any of them get out, they could keep terrorizing other places. The short-term effects is that they go to the town where Izuku's at and they start beating stuff up. The long-term is that they escape in general and continue to have Liberation Army activities on the down low, so they continue spreading their propaganda. So both scenarios are things that they want to avoid from happening. The other thing is, from the narrative perspective, is that the author might be priming us to see the consequence of the heroes failing here, because now if the people manage to get away and go to the town where Izuku's at, it's pretty much, well, this is what Edgeshot said would happen if they failed. There's a logical sequence between this scene and that potential future, so that's why I think the line is there from a narrative sense. So because the line makes sense for a character to say at this point, and the line also serves as priming for readers, it's going to be interesting to see what the author wants to do. Does he want to be cynical and say that the heroes fail, or does he want to be idealistic and prevent this bad thing from happening? Also, this page continues the Kaminari build-up, and we go into page 13. So things I want to note here is that it seems that Midnight is using stage fright rhetoric when she says, "Don't let the stage overwhelm you." That sounds like stage fright. The other thing is that Midnight goes in with her rhetoric saying, if imagining random people elsewhere doesn't do the trick, then think of the person who matters most to you right now. So that was great. That final panel with Midnight, that really makes me wonder if there is something going on with Midnight here. Like, is she one of the people that is saying that line because that's what she's doing to motivate herself? Like, who is she thinking of so far away? Is she thinking about her buddies Aizawa and Yamada? Because she was involved with that whole thing with Cloudboy back when he died. Like, she was one of the people there to see it. So I'm wondering what the author wants to do with Midnight. Right now, Midnight's carrying that role of guilt, right? She's carrying that guilt, taking these kids into fight. She should have been doing better. She loves youth, right? And this is pretty much her failure. This is a failure on a higher level, on like that metaphoric level. So I do want to see what the author wants to do with her. If she's going to carry any kind of weight towards these fights, is she going to go on any kind of speeches when she's fighting someone? Now, she wasn't in the main fight group, so maybe she'll be facing off with someone that hasn't arrived on the scene yet. Anyway, we go into page 14 and 15, which I think is just great. It's an absolutely great page for Kaminari, identifying Jiro as his most important person. And there is a little bit of room for interpretation here, because the thoughts that narrate Kaminari looking back at the group is that I want to be with you guys. So you have to keep in mind that the way that the author framed it here is that they are in quotation marks. So that's directly him recalling an event. Now you could take it seriously and say like, well, he's just recalling the group in general and Jiro is just the placeholder for that. Or you could be thinking, well, he's quoting himself, which means he's probably looking beyond that sentence, really thinking about what exactly he wanted, and he imagined Jiro, right? I do want to push for the Jiro x Kaminari angle, but I feel there are ways to get around it like this. If you want to say it's not conclusive, you could make the argument, and I think it would work. That said, when Jiro says "get it done" in Kaminari's name, I think that's there you get the value of Jiro having her ears plugged into the ground. It's specifically, she probably heard Kaminari talking about how he's feeling about this whole situation. So that was a really cute moment. You can't tell me otherwise. I really think this is just a cute moment in general. Other valuable thing on page 14 is, of course, the guy charging up with his taser. Interesting that he has to charge up. One more thing, numbers don't matter. Truer words have never been spoken in Hero Academia. And the other thing that's interesting is that he has a scar that looks like Jiro's waveform. So he has both markings for Kaminari and a marking for Jiro. I wonder if that's saying that in order for this guy to go down, both Jiro and Kaminari have to get involved. Because that's really interesting. It's really interesting that on the same page, those three are featured. It's just, for Jiro to get involved in that situation, it requires something going wrong. And that's what I'm a little bit worried about. Anyway, the rest of page 15 is just the build up and like the exposition on the villain's quirk. Page 16 is finally where you get that story arc having fruition with us being brought back to the school festival arc. It was really cool to see it. Again, this is another page that just kind of reinforces that Kaminari is specifically looking at Jiro. But yeah, it was cool to see this page, and it's cool to see page 17 where the fruition is just totally there with Kaminari taking all the lightning. I think this was a great shot. I love that shot of Kaminari. I think it's amazing. When you go back to, I think it was page 15, there was one panel where Kaminari just zipped to the front of the line, so I love that he knew that a lightning attack was coming, and I love that he was able to act so quickly to protect everyone else. Like, when it comes to saying whether or not the kids were useful, Kaminari just filled up his quota. If Kaminari goes down here, I think that's fine. I think he did great. I think this was absolutely valuable. Love that. Kaminari was great. And finally, we go into page 18 and 19, which is the setup for the next chapter. So the first thing I want to say is that if Hawks has time to stand in the doorway and look menacing, he has time to kill twice. I think not killing twice is really risky. It depends on what the author wants to do. If the author wants to say that, okay, Hawks, next chapter, he's going to be talking to Twice to try and bring Twice down or bring Twice onto their side, okay, justified. If Hawks is going to give Twice last words, or if Hawks is there specifically to, I don't know, gloat a little bit in front of Twice, waste of time. As far as I'm concerned, those feathers should have skewered Twice from the get-go. And honestly, like when you consider Hawks's rhetoric from those chapters so long ago, him identifying Twice as a good guy, he could have been saying like, because Twice is a good guy, I know he's going to try to fight hard for his friends, so it's better if I kill him right there. Honestly, if Hawks is going in with that mentality, I sincerely hope that he's not going to waste any more time than he has. I hope he's going to try and get some kind of value out of Twice, and he's not just about to have some kind of big episode wondering whether or not he should end Twice. Hawks sold me on Twice being a threat. I believe Hawks when Hawks pointed out that he could make Nomu, and it's like, if Twice right now produces the Nomu that can teleport him out of there, that's it. It's game over. Twice is quite literally the way that Nomus can show up and wreak havoc in Izuku's part of the town. You don't want Twice there to be able to duplicate any of those Nomus. Twice was with the Doctor long enough for the Doctor to be able to duplicate his quirk. So, gonna be interesting to see where exactly we go here. Twice, as far as I'm concerned, has access to an infinite supply of Shigarakis. And if he makes even one Shigaraki from after the villain fight, that Shigaraki can ruin this whole place. Everyone touching the ground is pretty much done if Shigaraki gets out there. And because it's a duplicate, that Shigaraki won't care about going all out with his body. So this is a very risky proposition here, keeping Twice alive. I really want to see the next chapter. If the next chapter starts with Hawks saying goodbye Twice and then just going for it, respect. We'll have to see though. We need to see. Next chapter is going to be the one where we see Hawks' rhetoric here. But again, if he has time to have two blades of feathers out, it's like, Hawks, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? Also, a nice little detail is that Hawks doesn't have any more wings, so all his feathers are currently deployed. So that's a pretty interesting little bit of detail. He might have more spy feathers. One last thing that I do want to point you to is just the imagery. Good old Horikoshi showed us the whiteboard, and the whiteboard has been toppled. Now, the thing with the whiteboard is that the whiteboard symbolizes Hawks and Twice's friendship, their relationship. It symbolizes where they bonded. And that whiteboard is toppled, erased, but it ain't broken. That's kind of interesting. What's going to happen? I think when that whiteboard breaks, Hawks and Twice break. We'll have to see. I think Hawks is cutthroat enough to just finish off twice, and I think that would be the good move here. I don't want it to happen, but twice is too much of a liability. Now, that's the end of the chapter. Overall, solid chapter. Let me know if I missed anything. It's always possible that I do. This is going to be a really fun time. Now, as we go into the future, what I'm going to be looking at for this particular kind of stuff, you know, we've already taken that step away from the hospital. I'm going to be looking at to see, well, how much stuff are the various heroes versus the notable villains. How much pages are they going to get? 3 pages per each villain, I think, would be perfect. You know what? I'd be totally happy with that. It's going to be interesting to see where we go from here. Any other things to say? This is going to be most likely drawn out. We're going to be here for a while. There's a lot of villains we have to go through. We still have all of Toga and Skeptic's teams to go through. We need Dobby. We need to get Getin as well. So there's quite a bit to go. So guys, let me know what you think down below. Let me know where you think we're going next week. This was a pretty cool chapter. I really enjoyed it. Anyway, everyone, thanks for watching, and until next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.